context. But here's a question for you guys, but does she have a desire to be in bed with Boaz? Yes or no? You can clearly see. No one's answering. You want to take a guess? Okay, the answer would be yes, she does, but as his wife. Okay, since we're on the topic of sex, I think we're going to cover a little bit about this in the Christian context too, since I know we have new friends here amongst us, and not everyone here has been at church for a long time, so we'll briefly mention about this. Actually, say that, yeah, that sounds right. Okay, so God made us male and female, and said it's not good to be alone. He wants us to be married, created marriage, wants us to be naked without shame, to be one flesh, so we can get married and love each other, and they can have pleasures and enjoyment, which is a pleasing and beautiful thing in the sight of God. But sex outside of marriage, outside of God's boundaries, would be treated as sin and unholy. And not just sex, but any sexual sin is unholy and sinful. Now, I'm going to give Dr. Sean Ho's example here. Any of you guys remember him? Now, let's say God did create sex for marriage, and when we take sex outside of marriage, we're crossing God's boundary and disobeying God. For example, is that they'll be disobeying God and choosing follow God's way, but choosing your own way and deciding and following what you want instead. Dr. Sean Ho's example would be that if you have a car, you want to follow the offer or the life manual on how to and not to disobey the God and life manual. But if you choose to so if you have a car, you would try to fill it with gasoline, right? You don't want to fill it with anything else like water, bubble tea, pop, or anything else. But if you choose to disobey God's commandments and follow your own way instead of God's way, you're doing harm to yourself, and there would be consequences. I'll be taking like bubble tea or Coke and filling in your car because you think that would be better than God's way and what God had designed sex to be. Now back to Ruth. Now Ruth is saying that I would love to be under your blanket as your wife. Her desires are good. She wants to be his wife. She's not asking to have anything appropriate before the wedding. Now let's continue reading chapter 3 and just verse 10.
The Lord bless you, my daughter, he replied. This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor.
Okay, now there are discussion and speculations if Boaz and Ruth actually committed sin as well or had sex before they were married, but that's why I thought that what Naomi said was not necessarily the best or wise counsel. Here's another reason why I do not believe that they had sex before they were married was because of what Boaz said. He says, "The Lord bless you, my daughter." You can see that Boaz keeps on mentioning about God, and when you sin, you tend to run away from God instead of mentioning or talking about God. I don't know if you know, but sin and God are like completely different ends of the spectrum. So like good and evil, light and darkness, holy and unholy. So when people usually commit sin, they hide, like in Genesis, where Adam and Eve hid themselves from God when they sinned. And let's see what he says. He's saying that this kindness is greater than what you have shown earlier. You have not run after younger men, whether rich or poor. So Boaz takes that as a very kind offer. You're asking me for me if I would propose to you, or you want me to be your husband? You didn't flirt around with any of the other guys, or rich or poor, but you chose me? So it appears like Boaz said, you have not run after younger men. could imply that Boaz could be much older than Ruth. Maybe Boaz had a low self-esteem, or maybe not as attractive as the other guys. Maybe he doesn't have a six-pack, maybe he has a one-pack. Instead, he thinks that Ruth is out of his league. Doesn't seem like it though, but however, Boaz, he has a job, he's Christian, and he loves God. And a message for the ladies would be, sometimes a man doesn't pursue you, not because he's not interested, but because he doesn't think that you would be interested in him. Let's continue reading verse 11.
And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character.
And he says, yes, I will do what you asked of me, Ruth. But every love story has obstacles that two lovers need to face. Let's take a look in what they have to face in the next chapter. Our next verse.
Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good, let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lies here until morning.
Okay, and here's the obstacle. There is a guardian redeemer of the family that is more closely related than Boaz. So can anyone remember what is a guardian redeemer from last time? From last month?
Like you're the first in line to acquire, to be able to redeem the land or something?
That's pretty close. Okay, so guardian redeemer. So it's the Hebrew word for it's a legal term for one who has obligation to redeem a relative in serious difficulty. Now, there's a big debate. There's a lot of debates in the book. Rather, in fact, Boaz is responsible for redeeming Ruth, and it relates to Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 and 10 about the Levite marriage. Let's take a look. Yeah. I guess not there. Okay, I'll read it. Levite marriage is, I'll read from Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 5 to 10. If brothers are living together, and if one of them dies without a son, his widow must not marry outside the family. Her husband's brothers shall take her and marry her, and fulfill the duty of the brother-in-law. The first son she bears shall carry on the name of the dead brother, so that his name will not be blotted out from Israel. However, if a man does not want to marry his brother's wife, she shall go to the elders in the town gate and say, my husband's brother refused to carry on his brother's name in Israel. He will not fulfill the duty of a brother-in-law to me. Then the elders of his town shall summon him and talk to him. If he persists in saying, I do not want to marry her, his brother's widow shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, take off his sandals, spit in his face, and say, this is what is done to the man who will not build up his brother's family line. That man's line shall be known in Israel as the family of the unsandaled. So we can see here that the brother is supposed to take care of the widow, but Mahlon only had one brother, which is who is Kilian, and he died as well. The brother does not have to take the widow as his wife, but I believe that is greatly frowned upon among the Israelites. This is not really clear. I probably have to do a little bit more research, but this is my assumption, is that if the husband has no brother, it appears like the guardian redeemers are next in line to redeem the widow. I believe the man can choose to redeem the widow, but if they don't, that would be great. Others would frown upon that. That would be like an example would be if your cousin just went bankrupt and had to live out on the streets, and they have no other family members. You're not supporting them. You live wealthily in your own house and not supporting them or helping them at all. Okay, let's continue reading 13 and 14.
13, 14. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good, let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until the morning.
So she lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized. And he said, no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor.
Okay. So what Boaz is saying, if the other redeemer wants to do his duty, let him take you. But if he is not willing to take you, then I'll take you. Now Boaz tells her to stay for the night until morning,